Bright Duty. Every student matters.
Hello everyone. Now we are going to begin with the chapter 8, Religious Histories, Bhakti Sufi Traditions. So in this chapter we will have to discuss about a new tradition which emerged in our country during the medieval period. So this is the main topic of this chapter, is how the Bhakti and the Sufi traditions took place in our country. Then the textual traditions regarding religious beliefs. So what were the text which has been used by the different Bhakti reformers, some of the religious leaders, to explain about their religion in the context of Bhakti? How this has emerged, how it is spread throughout the country, what were the reason behind it for the spread of this religion, and how they have put up the challenge over the wrong Brahmanical traditions which were practiced in India. So during the 8th to the 18th century AD, in this period, this period is actually considered as a medieval period. And what were the changes which were experienced by the Indian society, or which were introduced or established in the Indian society, which we are going to discuss inside this chapter. So during the medieval period, southern as well as the northern India witnessed the growth of many socio-religious movements. They aimed at purging Hinduism of its evils and saving it from the onslaught of Islam. Because in these days, we were first, from the 13th century onwards, we were under the Delhi Sultanate, Muslim rule. Again with that, followed by the Mughal Empire. So this was a threat upon the Hinduism. A series of Hindu saints and reformers stated that the religious reform movements which adopted the method of devotion, which is Bhakti, to achieve salvation. This is why this movement started. The Bhakti movement has started to achieve salvation. How to achieve salvation? The new method has been just taught by some of the religious reformers of our country. The method of expression of devotion, which ranged from routine worship of deities within temples and singing and chanting of devotional compositions. This was particularly true of the Vaishnava and the Shaiva. These were the new concept of the Vaishnava and Shaiva, which was emerged during this period. Thus began the Bhakti movement, and this is only the origin of the establishment of the Bhakti movement, start of the Bhakti movement in our country. The most famous and popular among the reformers were Ramanand, Kabir, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ravidas, Guru Nanak Dev. They are considered as the important one. The Bhakti movement greatly influenced the social, religious, cultural and political life of the people. It is influenced, this movement not only influenced that the one section or one part of our life, the entire society, they have experienced this change. The religious practices, there also changes were there, and culture and the political life were also changed. So like the Bhakti movement, Sufism in Islam also progressed during the medieval period. Sufism also greatly influenced the lives of the people. So this is all about that, the text, and about the reformers, Bhakti reformers, as well as the new religion other than Islam, which became very famous with the Sufism, which also emerged and started practicing by the different parts of our country as well as in the world. So according to this textual tradition regarding the religious beliefs, what it says about that? The textual traditions of this period included contribution attributed to the poet saints, most of whom express themselves orally in regional languages. This is the most important thing, that the regional language was used by these Bhakti reformers so that the ordinary people can also understand, or they can also get involved in this. These compositions were usually set to music, which were compiled by disciples or devotees, generally after the death of the poets. Not during their lifetime, but after their death, it has been practiced by their disciples. These traditions were fluid. Generations of devotees tended to elaborate on the original message, and occasionally it is modified and abandoned some of the ideas that appeared problematic or irrelevant in the different political, social, and cultural context. Some of the things were avoided also. So, usually these sources thus pose a challenge to historians. Now, this is a challenging task for the historians, how to interpret, how to collect the ideas and to bring it in a form of to understand the history of the land. Origin and meaning of Bhakti movement. So, according to the Hindu thought, salvation from the bondage of birth and death can be attained by three different methods, that is, Gyan, Karma, and Bhakti. Knowledge, action, and devotion. So, during the period of the Delhi Sultanate, 1206 to 1526, a number of Hindu saints and reformers set on a movement of religious reform, which adopted the last method, that is devotion, and therefore came to be known as Bhakti movement. So during this period, during the period of the Delhi Sultanate, it has been started. The movement was not altogether new. It first originated in the South India, and was advocated by Sankaracharya. So this altogether it is not new, and this is actually criticized the Hindu religious thought, Muslim preachers who stress the unity of God, and they also criticized the Hindu religion and thought and attempted to convert the Hindus to Islam by all means. Hinduism, they tried to defend itself by purging itself to some of its evil practices, such as empty ritual practices, rigorous of the caste system, and the idol worship. So this comes under that the causes of the birth of Bhakti movement. What were the reason behind it? Earlier in the previous chapters, we have already gone through about that. The Vedas, Purans, Dharma Shastras, Upanishads. But then why this is required? What were the reason behind it? Why this movement took place in our country? So first of all, we are coming to discuss about that. Evil practices of the Hindus. In ancient India, Hinduism enjoyed a high place among the religions of the world. India was considered a land of great rishis, saints, and scholars. But during the medieval period, Hinduism lost its pristine purity and grandeur, and many evil crept in it. Empty ritual practices, customs, and ceremonies has taken place of true religion. This true religion has been replaced by the empty ritual practices, the customs, and the ceremonies. This is the reason behind it. The Brahmins, the priestly class, had become selfish and corrupt, and the degeneration of Hinduism greatly perturbed the patrons of this religion, and they ardently praised the path of devotion, or bhakti, to eradicate the evils of Hinduism and to reform it. So this is the path which has been suggested and shown by the Bhakti reformers. How to eradicate the evil practice of Hinduism. Second, it comes about the influence of Vaishnavism. The Gupta period witnessed the origin of Vaishnavism, which is Vaishnavism worshipped Vishnu and its incarnations such as Vasudeva, Narayan, Krishna, Rama, Parshurama, Vaman, Narsimha, Matsya Kumar, Vara, later on Buddha, was also considered an incarnation of Vishnu, which is also known as Dasavatar of Lord Vishnu. After Gupta is, Vaishnavism also flourished in South India. Gradually, Vaishnavism spread throughout the country, whole India. Sphere of spread of Islam. This we are discussing in the context of that, the causes of the birth of Bhakti movement. What were the reason behind it? Why this Bhakti movement took place in our country? So, from the fear of spread of Islam, before the coming of Islam in India, the Bhakti reformers had failed to attract the common people. The Muslim rulers attempted to forcibly convert the Hindus to Islam. What were the reason behind it? Because of that, Islam preached the brotherhood of mankind and opposed priesthood and caste system. This is the main reason behind it. And due to that, the brotherhood of mankind and oppose the priesthood, the low caste Hindus, they have started converting themselves. The conversion work took place with the low caste people in our country. So what happened? The many Bhakti reformers now also started preaching the unity of God and brotherhood of mankind. So this part has now also started preaching by the Bhakti reformers. Influence of Sufi sects. This is also a new sect which emerged. Sufism was a Muslim reform movement which was born in the early medieval age. The most important Sufis in India were Khwaja Muinuddin Chishti. In later part we will discuss it in detail. Some of the extra information also will be given. Baba Farid, Khwaja Qutubuddin, Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia, etc. were some of the important ones. Emergence of great reformers. This is the final point of this, the causes of the birth of Bhakti movement. To the good fortune of Hinduism. During the medieval period, many prominent Bhakti reformers were born in different parts of India. Among them, the most prominent were Vallabhacharya, Jayadev, Namdev, Ravidas, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Ramanand, Surdas, Tulsidas, Mirabai, and Guru Nanak Dev. All these great Bhakti reformers severely condemned the evils of the Hindu society and preached the path of love and devotion to God. It was solely due to their efforts that the Bhakti movement became popular all over the country. Next, we are coming to discuss about ideas and practices of the Bhakti movement. So, some of the well-known religious reformers who adopted the cult of Bhakti to fight against the danger of Islam and the Brahmanical tyranny were Ramanand, Kabir, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Guru Nanak Dev. So, what they have emphasized, all these the Bhakti reformers, with the same sequence of action, the great penance of the knee. Though they differed here and there in details, they were all unanimous in emphasizing the fundamental of the Bhakti cult, which we are coming to discuss under some of the headlines which is given over here. With this, the belief in one God. This is the unanimous point adopted by the most of the Bhakti reformers of our country. The first point is given by them is the belief in one God. The Bhakti reformers preach that there is one God. His name is Eternal Truth. There is no such thing as God for the Hindus and God for the Muslims. God is one. There is no specification with Hindus and Muslims. God is for the human, for the mankind. The Bhakti reformers believe that Allah, Ishwar, Vishnu, Krishna, Rama, etc. all are the names of the one God. Whether we call them Allah or we call them Rama or Krishna. But they all are the same. They are considered as Almighty. Good deeds, the Bhakti reformers, this is the second point, good deeds. Bhakti reformers preach that the man should perform good deeds. What comes under the good deeds? Means that speak the truth. The first of all, what they are putting there straight? Speak the truth. This is the first one. Then practice purity. After that, justice and goodness. Live on honest earning, not to steal, abstain from stealing, and enduring the feelings of others, and shun selflessness. One must practice these principles in his daily life. And what is the suggestion given by them? Out of all these the points, at least one must have to practice by human being in their daily life. Universal brotherhood. Most of the Bhakti reformers preached universal brotherhood. They protested against all distinctions of caste, color, creed, and sect. So there will be no any difference on the basis of all such points. All human beings were the creation of one God and by the same God. We all are created by the same God. So no person is low or high. First of all, what we are? We all are the humans. No person is low or high because of birth. The Bhakti reformers emphasize the fundamental unity of mankind and the doctrine of human equality. So what this universal brotherhood teaches, what are the suggestive points given by this? The Bhakti reformers about the equality of the mankind or human. Now, emotional worship. The leaders of the Bhakti movement laid stress on chanting the hymns or bhajans of the Lord in utmost devotion and develop love for Him and His creations. So, we must have to chant the bhajans. We must have to chanting the hymns or the bhajans in the devotion of the love for the Creator. In the name of God, as they are the creator of the human, creator of the mankind. Guru Bhakti, now coming to the point of that, the spiritual mentor. So every person must have attached himself, they must have to attach themselves to a spiritual mentor. This is also the another suggestion. Spiritual mentor who would guide him to the path, high path, and teach men the great lessons of love. So, what is the work done by this spiritual mentor? To take the human being at the high path to the great path, as well as to teach the lessons of love and the secrets of how to win his love. Self surrender or prapti is also the one of the ideas and the practices which has been started by Bhakti reformers. What they are telling about that, about the prapti, about the self surrender, that a man in love with God should surrender himself completely to a teacher and be guided by him in everything. For everything, we must have to surrender ourselves to a teacher who can guide us and who can suggest that some of the right direction. No beliefs in rituals. They also suggest that do not believe in any type of the rituals which were earlier suggested by the Brahmins. Bhakti reformers They attacked the formalities of religion. Then ostentatious prayer, penance, fast, and the performance of the sacrifices. All such things they do not suggest. Oppose the rigidity of the caste system. This is the most important thing which was not followed. The suggestions were given by the Bhakti reformers not to follow this system. The caste system was based on inequality and had no place in the doctrine of divine love. The divine love, there is no theory of this caste system. All are created by one God. All are equal in the eyes of God. Condemned idol and image worship. According to this, the Bhakti reformers, God dwells in the heart of man. They are in our heart and regarded as they are in the heart of man and not in an image or in temple. God never exists in any temple. It is always there in the heart of the human being. No sanctity of any particular language. No language is considered as the God's loving language. So what it says about that? The Bhakti reformers did not believe in the sanctity of any particular language. God is not pleased with any particular language. This is a misconception developed by Brahmins that Sanskrit is the language of the God. These Bhakti reformers, now they are telling there is no any language which can please the God. God understands only one language, and that is the language of the heart. What language is understood by God? The language of heart, where He lives, He resides. That language only understood by Lord, understood by God. So, in the beginning of this, the bhakti is possible only after the certain conditions which are fulfilled by the faith in God, following the truth, unattachment and the desirelessness, control over thought and deed, association with holy man and satsang, humility and submission to the will of the Almighty. So this is all about that, the causes and the ideas, the practices of the Bhakti movement. Bhakti movement and All India movement. Now coming to discuss in the context of the throughout the country. Changes in religious beliefs and the devotional texts. And throughout the country, inside this chapter, we will have to discuss how textual traditions have been used by historians to understand the Bhakti Sufi traditions. So the Bhakti movement was not confined to any one quarter of India, but it spread its influence all over the country. It spread like a great ocean wave to the three corners of this triangular peninsula, the southern India. The triangular peninsula, just you recall that the map of India, how it is, there's the three sides, the water bodies are there, oceans and the seas are there. But all the Bhakti reformers that did not flourish at one and the same time. The history of the movement goes back to the time of the great reformer, that is Shankaracharya, who gave a solid philosophical background. But the movement became popular in the Middle Ages. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu led the movement in the East India. Modern day it is Uttar Pradesh. Tukaram, Namdev and Trilochan in Central India. Then Sadhna, Pipa, Mirabai, Tulsidas and above all Kabir were its leaders in the northern India. Kabir's teaching had great influence in Punjab, but actually the movement in the Punjab was led by Guru Nanak Dev Ji and his successors. The message of love and devotion, the fundamental of the Sikh Bhakti creed are the same advocated by the other Bhakti reformers in India in the Middle Ages. So this is all about that, the movement, how it spread. With that, the different Bhakti reformers in different parts and in different times. This is the additional information giving you about that. A 12th century bronze sculpture of Manika Vachakar, a devotee of Shiva, who composed beautiful devotional songs in Tamil. Religious ferment in northern India, which we are coming to discuss under that, the period of 8th to 18th century, a mosaic of religious practices. This is now coming to discuss about that. Mosaic means a very striking. Mosaic means what? Diversity, diversify with the different colors. There's the different religions, the different people, how they are combined. So a very striking feature of this period here means that the entire chapter is based on that, the 8th to 18th century. This is the increasing visibility of a wide range of gods and goddesses in sculptures as well as in the religious books. In one respect, this indicates the continuity and increase in the number of worshippers of the major deities, Vishnu, Shiva, and the goddess. Each of them was depicted in a variety of forms everywhere. The different forms of Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, and the different goddesses are also there. The integration of various cults, how the different cults, they are integrated. The above development suggests that mainly two processes were at work. The first was the process of spreading Brahmanical ideas. This is indicated by the composition, compilation, and preservation of the Puranic text in simple Sanskrit verses, which were clearly meant to make them accessible to women and Sudras, which were earlier prohibited by this group of the people, like the women and the Sudras. Now, when it has been translated into the simple Sanskrit verses. The second factor at work was that the Brahmins began to accept and rework the beliefs and practices of these and the other social classes. Other social classes, according to the Brahmanical social framework, how they have followed this with the rigidity in their day-to-day life. So all such things were started taking place. The changes started taking place. Many beliefs and practices were in fact shared through a continuous dialogue between the great Sanskritic Puranic traditions and little tradition throughout the country. For example, the process, now coming to this about this, the process is evident at Puri in Odisha, where the principal deity was identified by the 12th century Jagannath, which is meaning Lord of the world, a form of God Vishnu. The deity was not represented in a different way. In this case, a local deity whose image was and still continues to be made by local tribal specialist. Who makes this? The local tribal specialist, and was recognized as a form of Lord Vishnu. But at the same time, Vishnu was depicted in a way that was quite different from that in the other parts of the country. What this the Lord Vishnu's image is been created at Puri at Jagannath temple is not similar to the other images of Lord Vishnu which has been practiced throughout the country. So this instance of integration of the same kind are also evidence from goddess cults. Worship of the goddess simply in the form of a stone smeared with the other ochre was widespread. This is about this. Worship of the goddess, often simply in the form of a stone smeared with ochre, pale yellow or clay kavi, was evidently widespread. So what it says about that, perhaps the practice is the most increasingly, the phase is increasingly visibility of a wide range of gods and goddesses in sculpture as well as in text, At one level, this indicates the continued and even extended worship of the major deities, that is Vishnu, Shiva, and the goddess, each of whom was visualized in a variety of forms. So, one form is been mentioned over here under the heading of the religious ferment in northern India. And this is the example of the process is evident at Puri, Orissa, where the principal deity was identified by the 12th century as Jagannath, literally the Lord of the world, a form of Lord Vishnu. This is the explanation of this. The picture is given over here. Jagannath, extreme right, Lord Vishnu. This is also Vishnu with his sister Subhadra. She is at the center and his brother Balram at the left. So here this Subhadra, she is the sister of Lord Krishna and wife of whom? She is the Lord Krishna's sister. Then we are coming to discuss about that, the integration of various cults. Such instances of integration are evident amongst goddess cults as well. Worship of the goddess, often simply in the form of a stone smeared with ochre, pale yellow, clay kavi, was evidently widespread. These local deities were often incorporated with the Puranic framework by providing them with an identity as a wife of principal male deities. Sometimes they were equated with Lakshmi, the wife of Vishnu, in the other instances with Parvati, the wife of Shiva. But in this manner, here it is different. She is not the wife of Lord Krishna. She is the sister of Lord Krishna. So this way, this is the difference. The various cults were practiced in those days. In the 12th century, this image has been given of Jagannath Puri, or the temple of Jagannath at Puri. Difference and conflict, beliefs and practices. What it says? The worship of gods, the goddesses was often associated with the tantric practices. Tantric worship was widespread in the subcontinent as it was open to men and women. Earlier, the Quranic texts, the Vedas, there were the limitations. The women and the Sudras, they were not supposed to touch. So, what it is about the Tantric? This is the widespread in subcontinent, and men and women, anyone can practice this. So, what it says that the Tantricism was a corrupt form of Mahayana Buddhist doctrines. The tantric practices were common in many parts of the country. Because why it gains the popularity? Because those who followed the tantric rejected the caste class within the ritual context. While performing the rituals, they do not consider the caste. So this is the many part of the country, they were open to men and women, and these followers, they did not follow the concept of that during while they are performing the rituals, they do not follow the caste system, and it is very famous in the northern India. Many of these ideas influenced Shaivism and the Buddhism, especially in the eastern, northern, and the southern parts of the country. So the western part of the country is not in touch. They are not in the practice of the tantricism. Then what it says that the practitioners of tantric rituals frequently ignore the authority of Vedas. They often tended to project their chosen deity, either Vishnu or Shiva, as supreme. So they considered only these two gods as the supreme god, and they are following this. The tradition of devotion of bhakti need to be located within this context. Devotional worship had a long history of almost 1,000 years before the period we are considering, 8th to 18th centuries. Before that, the 1,000 years back. During this time, expressions of devotion ranged from the routine worship of deities with temples to static, the great delight, adoration, where devotees attain a trance-like state, that is the Homar. The singing and chanting of devotional compositions was often a part of such modes of worship. This was particularly true of the Vaishnavism and the Shiva sects. Then poems of prayer, early traditions of bhakti. What it says and what we are going to study in this. During the course of evolution of various forms of worship, in many cases, the poet saints emerged as leaders around whom there developed a community of devotees or followers. Besides this, while the Brahmins remained intermediaries between gods and devotees in several forms of bhakti, the new traditions also accompanied and acknowledged women and lower caste people ineligible for liberation within the Brahmanical framework. So, this is about that. The historians also of the religion, they classified bhakti tradition into two broad categories. One is Saguna and the other is Nirguna. Saguna included tradition that focused on the worship of specific deities such as Shiva, Vishnu, and his avatars, means the incarnations. In the previous slide, we have just seen that the Dasavatar of Lord Vishnu and the forms of goddesses or Devi. Nirguna Bhakti, on the other hand, was worship of an abstract form of God. So, this is about that, the poems of prayers and the early traditions. Now, we are coming to discuss about that in a two different forms, Saguna Bhakti and the Nirguna Bhakti. This is about the early tradition of Bhakti, Bhakti traditions, Saguna, Nirguna, then anthropomorphic form and the abstract form. This is now coming to discuss about that, the Alvars and the Nannars of Tamil Nadu. In southern India, we are coming to discuss. In the southern India, the Bhakti movement, which is given around the 6th century, were led by Alvars, meaning the devotees of Vishnu. Alvars were the devotees of Vishnu, Nannars were the devotees of Shiva. This is the some of the Bhakti movements were led by the Alvars and the Nannars. This is Alvars were the Vishnu, followers of Lord Vishnu, and Nannars were the followers of Lord Shiva. So this is the two different, the movement started in the southern India. The Nannars, literal meaning is Shiva. The leader of these two schools of Bhakti, they combined their forces to give a severe blow to the non-Vedic faith. This is the literal meaning of the Alvars, is those who are the immersed in the devotion of Vishnu, and the meaning of the word Nannars of those who are devotees of Shiva. Then what it says, the leaders, what they says about that, these two schools of Bhakti movement, they combined their forces to give a severe blow to the non-Vedic faith. When they had achieved their object, they turned against each other. The Alvars and the Nannars, they traveled from place to place, singing hymns in Tamil in praise of their gods, either in the devotion of Lord Shiva or in the devotion of the Lord Vishnu. So during their travel, these two sects identified certain shrines as the abodes of their deities. What they have? They abodes of their chosen deities. Later, big temples were built at those places and developed as pilgrimage centers. This is the gradual development of the people. Then next it comes about that the attitude of the sects towards the caste. Alvars and Nannars had the attitudes. According to some historians, the Alvars and the Nannars started a movement of protest against the caste system and the Brahmanas and attempted to reform the system. The devotees came from the different social backgrounds such as artisans, cultivators, even from the caste that they were considered untouchables. Some of them had Brahman background also. So this is all about that, the attitude of the sect towards the caste. The Alvars and Nannars, they claim that their compositions were as important as the Vedas. They held that their text was as significant as 4 Vedas in Sanskrit that was cherished by Brahmins. The Tamil songs of the Alvars are marked by such depth of feelings and true piety that they are looked upon as Vaishnav Vedas. These songs are still popular in South India and their authors are held in great veneration. The images of their saints are worshipped side by side with those of Vishnu and his various carnations and avatars. So, all these, the Brahmin reformers, their images are also worshipped in the temples. The Nanars compose their devotional song with the highest spiritual sentiments and set up Saivism on a strong footing. The number of their saints is usually given 63, and their hymns are also widely read in the South India and held in great veneration. Their sacred book is also known as Nalaira Divya Prabandham, was often described as Tamil Veda. Let us see what this slide says, that the composition of the alvars and the nanars. These alvars and the nanars are considered to be as important as Vedas. Their compositions of alvars and nanars. Instance is given the anthologies of compositions of the alvars and the alvars are the Nala Ira Divya Prabandham, was described as the Tamil Veda. This is the name of a book, and the text was significant like Vedas that were used by the Brahmins in Tamil Nadu. Women devotees. One of the striking features of these traditions. This is alvars and the nanars. This is the women devotees. Very striking feature of this Bhakti movement. For example, there was a saint poet called Andal, a woman alvar. Her compositions were sung and sung even today. That time also it was sung by the people, and now also they are devotees, they are singing songs. Another woman, Karaikar, a Mayyar, a devotee of Lord Shiva. This Andal was of the Alvar. Now this Karaikal Ammayyar, she is a devotee of Lord Shiva and adopted the path of extreme asceticism to attain her goal. Her compositions were preserved within the Nanar tradition, and these women renounced their social obligations but did not become nuns. Their presence was a challenge to patriarchal norms. So, this way, the contribution of the women devotees were also there. Now, this religion, the Bhakti movement, and their relation with the state, with the government. Though Jainism and Buddhism were prevalent in Tamil region, Buddhism and the Jainism both, these religious traditions for several centuries received occasional royal patronage. They also received support from merchants and artisans. This is about that, the relation with the state. They also received the support and the most magnificent temples like Shiva temple at Chidambaram. The Chola rulers also supported the Bhakti traditions and built temples of Shiva and Lord Vishnu. Some of the magnificent temples for Shiva, such as temple in Chidambaram, Tanjavur and Gangaikonda Cholapuram, were constructed under their patronage. So the Chola rulers built temples often to claim divine support and proclaim their own power and status, and adorned those temples with stone and metal sculpture to prevent these visions of the popular saints. So this is the contribution of the Chola rulers, and they have supported and given their feeling about the God and their belief about the religion. The Vellala peasants, this is actually the group of the peasants, Vellala. Also, they also revered the Nanars as well as the Alvars. The rulers also tried to win their support. They made the spectacular representation of Shiva in bronze sculpture. In the beginning only I have showed you a slide. There the bronze sculpture was been created. The Chola kings introduced the singing of Tamil Shaiva hymns under royal patronage, taking the initiative to collect and organize them into texts, which is known as the Tevara. According to inscriptional evidence, the Chola king Parantaka I had constructed the metal images of Appar, Sambandar, and Sundarar in a Shiva temple. These were carried in procession during the festival of these saints. This is the Brihadaswara temple at Tanjavur. This temple is having that's a unique architectural feature. This the main shrine. This is the main shrine. It never cast its shadow on the ground. Never one can find this. The shadow has been cast on this. This shadow, one can claim that here it is the shadow, but this is the shadow of this temple, not of this. This temple, this is the main shrine, and this shrine never cast their shadow. Madurai Meenakshi Temple Tower. Then coming to discuss about that, the Lingyat sect, the Veer Shaiva traditions in Karnataka. In the first half of the 12th century, witnessed the emergence of a new movement in Karnataka led by Brahman named Basavana. His name was Basavana. This is the time period mentioned over here. Who was initially a Jain and a minister in the court of Kalachuri king. His followers were known as Veer Shaivas, heroes of Sivas, or Lingayats, bearers of the Linga. Lingayats continued to be an important community in the region to Dunid. They worship Shiva in his manifestations as Linga, and men usually wear a small Linga in a silver case on a loop strung over the left shoulder. So this way here they are using it. This is the importance about that, the Lingyat community, and how they are looking different in comparison to the other group of the people. This is the Lingyat movement is also known as the Veer Shaiva movement. The Veer Shaiva tradition is derived. They believe that on the death. This is the another belief about that, the Veer Shaiva tradition. Lingyat believe that on the death of the devotee, they will unite with the Shiva and will not return to this world. Therefore, they do not practice funerary rites, such as cremation prescribed in the Dharma Shastra. So, their bodies are engraved. They are not set for the funeral. So, instead, they ceremonially bury their dead. The Lingyats challenge the idea of caste and the pollution attributed to the certain groups by Brahmins. They also questioned the theory of rebirth. So these Lingyats, they opposed the caste system. They did not believe in the untouchables. These won them followers amongst those who were marginalized within the Brahmanical social order. The Lingyat also encouraged certain practices disapproved in Dharma Shastras, such as the post-poverty, marriage, and the remarriage of widows. Our understanding of the Vaishnava tradition is derived from Vachanas, which means the literally saying, Vachan, bolne se, composed in Kannada by women and men who joined the movement. So this is all about that, the Lingyat community in Karnataka, and his founder was Basavana.